They say some myths die with time, fading away like old photographs left in the sun. But some myths don't die. They just hang out and wait. And when they return, they come back burning. This is the story of the woman made of fire. A legend the Yoruba elders refuse to tell after sunset, because calling her name at the wrong hour is said to make her appear. Our story begins in a small, quiet Yoruba village, just as the Harmattan season arrived, blanketing the world in a fine, dry haze. But this year, the Harmattan brought something else with it. Something strange. It started with the footprints. Not ordinary footprints, but marks that glowed with a faint, pulsing red, burned deep into the hard, dry ground. It was as if someone had walked across the earth with molten feet. Every night, the villagers were haunted by the same eerie sound drifting through the quiet air. Slow, heavy, like dry firewood, cracking under immense pressure. But whenever they gathered the courage to look outside, there was nothing, no one. Just the eerie silence of the night, and those glowing footprints. They always led away from the village, snaking into the dark forest, and stopping right at the edge of the old shrine, a place that had been abandoned and feared for decades. The elders, their faces etched with a worry they wouldn't explain, warned everyone, "Do not go near that place," they'd say. Their voices low and serious. Some doors are better left unopened, but we all know that curiosity is often stronger than fear. Especially for a young woman named Faith. Faith wasn't like the others. She believed that every myth, every whispered legend, held a kernel of forgotten truth. She was a painter. She saw the world in shapes and colors that most people ignored, finding beauty in the shadows and stories in the silence. One evening, sitting outside her hut, Faith decided she had to capture the mystery of the footprints. She set up her canvas, mixed her paints, and tried to recreate the strange, smoldering red she'd seen burned into the earth. But the moment her brush, loaded with red ochre, touched the canvas, something impossible happened. The paint sizzled. A thin wisp of smoke curled upwards, smelling of burnt wood and something else. Something ancient. Her paintbrush, held tight in her hand, suddenly burst into a shower of tiny, harmless sparks. Faith dropped it, her heart pounding in her chest. She stared at the canvas, terrified, because the shape that was forming on its own, a dark scorch mark spreading through the cloth, wasn't a footprint. It was a woman's silhouette. Tall, slender. Her hair seemed to flow like living flames. Just then, her grandmother entered the hut. Her eyes fell upon the smoldering canvas, and all the color drained from her face. She took a step back, her hand flying to her mouth as she whispered a single, trembling name. "My God, the woman of fire." "A spirit," she explained, "who was said to burn the very boundaries between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. A spirit who only returns when a sacred promise, made long ago, has been broken and left unpaid." Generations ago, the village faced a brutal attack from raiders. They were outnumbered, and all hope was lost. But a woman, a priestess of the old ways, offered to save them. She performed a forgotten ritual, sacrificing herself to a great, sacred fire. Her spirit rose from the flames, becoming a living inferno that shielded the village and drove the raiders away in terror. In return for her sacrifice, the villagers made a solemn vow to honor her name, to maintain her shrine, and to make offerings every year, so her memory would never fade. But promises, like memories, can erode with time. The yearly offerings stopped. The shrine at the edge of the forest fell into ruin, its altar buried under leaves and neglect. Her name was spoken less and less, until it was erased from the daily lives of the people she had saved. The myth contained a chilling warning. When the final ember of her memory dies, she will rise to take back what was forgotten. Standing there, listening to her grandmother's story, Faith finally understood. The glowing footsteps weren't just a strange occurrence, they were warnings. The fire spirit was returning. That night, the entire village felt wrong. The air was thick and heavy, suffocatingly still. The restless Harmattan wind which usually whistled through the thatched roofs, had quieted down. Then, suddenly, the sound returned. It wasn't far away this time. It was right at the village's edge. Faith pushed open the door of her hut. The sight that met her eyes stole her breath. The whole sky behind the forest canopy was glowing a deep, furious red, as if a second sun was rising in the middle of the night. And then she saw her. Walking out from between the trees was a woman, her entire body made of shifting, crackling fire, yet she moved with the fluid grace of a living person. Her eyes were 2 points of brilliant white heat. Her hair danced and writhed like a living flame, and with every step she took, the dry earth was scorched black beneath her feet. Panic erupted. Villagers screamed, running from their homes in terror. The thatched roofs of nearby huts began to smolder and catch fire, without ever being touched. Goats broke free from their pens, bleating in fear as they scattered into the night. But the woman of fire wasn't chasing anyone. She wasn't causing chaos. She walked confidently, headed straight for Faith. Faith's legs gave out, and she fell to her knees, trembling uncontrollably. The heat was immense, but it felt different from a normal fire. It was a heat that seemed to warm the soul as much as it burned the air. The fire spirit stopped just a few feet in front of her. The flames that made up her body seemed to bend inward, almost as if she were bowing. Then she spoke, her voice echoing not in Faith's ears, but directly in her mind. It sounded like 1,000 crackling logs and the rush of a powerful wind. You remembered me. Faith's painting. Her attempt to capture the forgotten story had been like a single spark in the darkness, reigniting a memory the entire village had let die. The spirit raised a hand, made a pure, liquid flame. She reached out and gently placed it on Faith's forehead. Faith braced for unbearable pain, for the searing heat to consume her. But it didn't burn. Instead of pain, her mind flooded with visions. She saw the woman once human standing before the ritual pyre, her face resolute. She saw the villagers chanting her name in gratitude as her sacrifice saved them all. Then she saw the long, slow decay of that gratitude. Centuries of neglect, the shrine crumbling, her name being erased, her story, her very existence, being stolen by apathy. The flames around the spirit grew brighter, more intense. The spirit whispered in her mind again, her voice filled with an ancient sorrow. If a story fades, the fire comes back to collect. She then stepped past Faith, gliding toward the heart of the village. The sky lit up like a false dawn. One by one, every hut burst into flames of spectacular, terrifying inferno. But a strange thing was happening. None of the villagers were being burned. They weren't even singed. Instead, as the flames washed over them, they felt something being ripped away from them. Their memories. The spirit wasn't destroying the village. She was taking back every memory they had erased, leaving them with the same emptiness they had left for her. When the last flame vanished as quickly as it had appeared, the villagers stood looking around, their faces blank and confused. They didn't know where they were. They didn't recognize each other. They didn't even know their own names. But Faith remembered everything. The visions the spirit had shown her were now burned into her own memory. She was now the last keeper of the fire, the sole guardian of the forgotten story. The spirit appeared behind her one last time, a shimmering, translucent figure against the night sky. "As long as you remember me," she whispered, "I will not burn your world." And with that, she turned and walked back into the forest, leaving behind a trail of glowing footprints. Footprints that, to this day, have never cooled. A permanent reminder that some stories refuse to be forgotten. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into folklore, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. See you next time.